Well, welcome back. Welcome back. I'm so glad you're here. So we are about to transition into the next section of the Way of the Mastery. This is lesson 13 called You Are Unlimited Spirit. So again, we finished up the first section of the book and now we're moving into the Way of Transformation. And a couple of notes about this particular lesson. Number one, it's going to be long. I don't know. This is where, to me, there's been beautiful, magnificent lessons up until this point in time, but these are the ones where I literally read a sentence or two and I got to stop and take it all in. And this section, this one is so rich, and so many of them coming up are going to be so rich. You're going to be wanting to say, but Mike, we got to slow down. I know. Let me just tell you that was a very common experience as I went through this the first time. And so without further ado, let's jump into the Unlimited Spirit lesson 13, or You Are Unlimited Spirit, excuse me. So first of all, right out of the gate, Jesus starts talking about this idea of separation in the first paragraph. In true, separation does not exist in all of creation. So there's no such thing as separation in truth, right? And then the two paragraphs down, the paragraph that starts off with, this is an aspect of you that has chosen to perceive yourself as identified with the physical body in your third dimension, which we would call space, the world would call space and time. What I want to emphasize here is this idea of aspects or different parts of. One of the things that I have discovered in my own journey is that we are perceived like we are taught, being in this third dimensional reality, that there's just one of us. And for me, what I'm starting to understand is, well, actually, there's more than one of us. There's more than one part of us. And I think this beautifully illustrates it, because Jesus starts talking about this idea of different aspects of us. So in other words, we're multidimensional. So there's not just one of us. There's actually many, many, many parts of us. That helps to start to understand, but get a feel for, as we go through this when Jesus is talking about it. And so then, again, Jesus, there is an aspect of you. So in other words, there is another part of you that goes beyond and knows more than we ever dreamed possible. And then he says in the last sentence in that paragraph, rather, I speak of the self that transcends all limitations and exists in all dimensions. So in other words, while we look at this third dimensional body reality, this person called Mike or yourself, there is a part of us that transcends all of it. And we don't have to do anything other than acknowledge that. It's not like we have to earn that. In truth, it's already there. It's just that we haven't given any attention to that. And if anything, we've been taught the opposite, that we're not so much more. And part of this process, this awakening process, is to just start to understand you're so much more than just this one-dimensional being. You're multi-dimensional being, right? Jesus, in a couple paragraphs down, at no time are you imprisoned within the body. At no one time are you limited to the appearances that you have come to believe is you, no matter how deep the pain, no matter how certain you've been of what you call your common sense telling you is, I am here in this body. You're more than that. And this is where Jesus starts really talking about that. In the next paragraph, the way of transformations rests on exactly the same thing that all of your dreams rest upon, the decision concerning what you would be committed to. For you cannot dream a dream if you cannot create an experience in the field of consciousness without being 100% committed to it. Again, Jesus is really, hey, you got to be committed to this thing. Giddy up. All right. Then in the next section, an exercise to expand your awareness. One of the things I'm going to quickly bring up here is that throughout the course of the book, what I started to do was create what I called master affirmations. This would be one of them, right? I'm not what I've perceived myself to be. I am unlimited pure spirit and nothing is unavailable to me. Now you're starting to step into your power, right? Therefore, in this moment, I choose to open access to other dimensions. Whoa. So you're going to open yourself up to having a bigger experience than a one-dimensional thing. Yes. I open up access to other dimensions of experience so that I might call this moment to me in a different way. So let me look at this a little bit differently. Let me try to drop some more pebbles into my awareness, this idea that I could be multidimensional and I could have more experiences than I'm currently having. And then in the next paragraph, Jesus talks about, or two paragraphs down, you're a field of consciousness having that experience. Now learn to look beneath the scene, learn to feel beyond the body, because you're more than the body. And then, so Jesus, as we go further into that section a little bit further down, there's this experience where Jesus says, what if you allowed yourself to play by looking at the being and saying within the mind, this is but one small expression of that being. I wonder what's occurring around the edges. So Jesus starts having you starting to play with this idea of you being multidimensional and picking up on different things. Further down in the paragraph, in the section, the paragraph that starts, we are suggesting here, what we are suggesting here is to use the most ordinary moments of your day to become aware of your own being, your own naturally expanded, unlimited self. So just by basically calling that to yourself, you can have a greater experience. And then this is in my book, if you could see it, this is where all the highlighting starts. And it's like, oh man, here we go. Right. So, all right. So, in the paragraph that starts off with, imagine being able to give your grocery store, go to grocery store. In that sentence, he starts again talking about pursuing it. And he says, actually being able to telepathically communicate them the answers to their dilemmas. So this is where it starts to get really deep on the abilities that you have. So in other words, if you can pick up on somebody having a problem, then you also have the ability to send them possible solutions, if that's what you want to do. The next paragraph down, the way of transformation absolutely requires you to be committed to living differently. How can you experience transformation if you don't use time to think and be differently? Oh yeah. This is where, for me personally, the experience be of this world, not in it, or be in this world, not of it. I think I screwed that up, right? So in other words, you're just playing a different game. It doesn't make you better than, or anybody else less than. It just means you're playing a different game than everybody else is when you start to play with this stuff, right? It's just, I love the sentence further on down in that paragraph where Jesus says, the only thing, the one and only thing that will bring you into transformation that you have sought is the willingness to abide where you are differently. So being different. Jesus goes on to say, begin again with a simple exercise, reminding yourself in truth that you are an unlimited spirit abiding in all dimensions. So again, you're opening yourself up. I love this next example that Jesus gives when he starts talking about in that same paragraph, your egoic mind might respond, well, you're born with that gift, but I don't have it. I cannot tell you how many times, and it still happens today, where occasionally I'll see somebody and I'll watch them doing some incredibly spiritually cool things. Like, I don't know, every once in a while I'll see somebody channeling something and I'm like, well, they can do it. Why can't I? And that's just one example of several where I have to catch myself and just go, yeah, but I can do that. I can do that. I just have to let go of the perception that I can't do it to open myself up to it. And so just paying attention to that. And then the next paragraph, this is a paragraph that I've got OMG next to it. When you have used, you then use this to perceive another as more special than you as a way of proving to yourself your lack of worth, your smallness, and your weakness. And I think the reason I highlighted is because of what I just said, because on all of a sudden I realized how often I do that to myself. And it's like, wow. And then in the paragraph below that starts, therefore, if you look upon another and say, oh, they can talk to Jeshua, but I can never do that. Stop lying to yourself, right? And then it says, I highlighted the thing that says, it is because you have called it to yourself as a reminder of what is already inherent within you. Again, you're not creating something that doesn't exist. It already exists, but you've believed that it hasn't existed because of the way we've been brought up and everybody else you're looking at. And now Jeshua is asking you to consider something differently, to be different, right? In the next paragraph, I highlighted, remember that you have called that experience through your beloved brother or sister into the field of your consciousness to remind you of the truth of your being, right? All right, now we're into the section cultivating unlimited consciousness. Again, several comments in here. Again, Jesus comes down to where it says, beloved friends, use time well. Ask yourself, am I fully committed to transforming my awareness from one who's been sleeping and perceive myself as limited to a space-time dimension? Or am I committed to truly hearing my brother's call to take up my cross and follow him? I'm in. I'm in. So I love the paragraph that starts, that is the cross of crucifixion. And all of a sudden you hear the ego starting to chip in, and that's what Jesus is really talking about in that paragraph. Well, maybe if I just get rid of my husband, that would do it. Or perhaps if I move to another location, maybe there's a spiritual technique out there that I haven't found yet in the smorgasbord available. Once I find it and start practicing, then I can get on with it. Right? So in other words, I can't do it now, when in truth, you've got it. You don't have to do anything other than just become aware of what you already have. You are in the holiest of temples yourself. It doesn't get any better than that. It doesn't get any better than that. Down in that paragraph, I love it when the sentence it says, in reality, nothing is impossible to you and nothing is unavailable to you. Nothing, ever. It's all available to you. We just have to let go of the thinking that says it's not available to us. I love down in the next section, several paragraphs, as you create a temporary perceived limitation, your belief that you're defined by your lines. Now think about this. All of these talk specifically about the blocks that you're having from these experiences. And I'm going to highlight, and I just think this is all just so powerful and so rich. The one I'm going to highlight is where it says, now think about this. If you feel constrained in this dimension, it does not mean that you are constrained, right? So even though that's your perception, you're not. And it's hard to wrap your mind around that. Well, what do you mean I'm not, Mike? Look at me. Look at my physical, look at my mental, look at my spiritual, look at what's going on. How can you say I'm not? And Jesus is saying, because you're not, right? The next paragraph, the light of your soul, pure spirit, remains undefiled and unlimited. That tiny ray can become aware of the whole, and that is the process of awakening. A couple of paragraphs down, the way of transformation is much simpler than you think. But again, it rests on your decision to use time to be wholly committed to awakening from the narrow constraints that have been placed upon you, your vast field of consciousness. And Jesus starts to talk about some other things that you can do. You can learn to direct energies. You might see it as a certain color. You can touch their field and their auric field. The paragraph that starts, but what they choose does not influence your choice. Listen very carefully. What another chooses does not influence your choice at all, even when it seems like it does. Wow. And then I love Jesus, the sentence, the paragraph that starts, no, 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 right? It's kind of like I could see Jesus doing that. In every moment of your experience, what your experience is coming from within you. You're defining the experience. You define it. And that's one of the things that Jesus is teaching us. Okay, into the next section, only you have the power to create your experience. Listen carefully. No one has the power to create your experience. No one has the power to limit your experience. And nowhere in the laws of God has it ever been written that you must conform your experience to the choices of another. Nowhere. You remain free to freely choose to be the embodiment of the Christ. You are the one who can bless creation. It begins when you are willing to assume responsibility for what you want to use time for. Oh, so rich, right? All right, the next section, bringing awareness to the limiting definitions of yourself. Okay, this in my book is highlighted. There's nothing in here that I can't read to you, because to me, this whole section is beyond powerful. It requires that you bring, right at the beginning, the second state requires that you begin to bring awareness to the little squiggly lines that you have drawn on the white and unlimited and perfectly unblemished canvas of consciousness. I love this because that's the purity. But what's happening is, because of our false perceptions about who and what we are, we pollute what we're able and capable of doing. And then ask the question, what am I defending? And this is where this really gets into, in my opinion, the crux of everything that we're working on. And that is this idea of, again, understanding that because of our perceptions, we are blocking our own ability to live an unlimited life. And our job is to go in and identify what those limitations are in a nutshell. I'm kind of just summing this up, but I'm going to read some of the stuff because I think it's powerful. The second you define yourself, in a couple of paragraphs down, you constrain yourself within the parameters that you have chosen to value. Instantly, you create exactly the experience of the vibrations that are the effect of the squiggles. So instantly, because of your perceptions of who you're saying you are, it alters everything. It alters the way you vibrationally show up. It alters what you're attracting to yourself. It alters everything, right? And then there's a beautiful thing in there says this: I am perfectly unlimited being, and I'll create a self who is an expression of the unlimited love of Christ. I love that. Further on down, again, this whole section to me is so powerful, and it's really why I love this work. It's also why I love being a coach. It's also why I love neuroscience. It's also why I love Psych-K and different ways of being able to transform our beliefs as quickly as we can, right? And so it's really where this really picks up to me and gets super juicy is it's very, very important, the paragraph that starts with that, to bring awareness to the definitions that you have given yourself and keep insisting upon them every single day. My suggestion to you is to start making, and it's going to talk about this later at the very last thing in this section, spoiler alert, is basically creating a journal. And it talks about just making a journal for the whole entire book, which is something I mentioned at the beginning. But I'm suggesting you actually do an exercise where you start paying attention to the ways that you've defined yourself. Have you defined yourself as this unlimited, incredible, powerful being, the way Jesus defined himself, the way God has defined ourselves, the way as God has created us, or something less than? And start paying attention to where those limitations, what those limitations are. Remember, there's no shame, blame, judgment, or guilt. None. We don't do that here. But looking at it from a very loving standpoint, just saying, is that what I really think of myself as? And if it's not, where are those areas in my life, or what are those things that are going on where I'm feeling like I am limited? And so I actually wrote down here your self definitions, and I put down deceptions, right? So becoming aware, consciously aware of what are your self definitions / deceptions, and start making a list of them just to become aware of it. Because when we become aware of it, then we can do something about it. That's what this work is, right? I love the paragraph where he said, well, there's a couple of things in here. Again, this is so rich. The paragraph, it also brings up some fear. Your egoic mind will ask, what would happen if I let go of the definitions that I'm familiar with? Oh my goodness. And in some cases, the ego is going like, hey, wait a minute, you are getting way too close to figuring out who and what I am. Back off. Literally, back off, right? And then the paragraph below that, if you want to experience walking on this planet as an enlightened master, first come to understand the foundation upon which the way of mastery is based. Second, bring awareness. Again, bring awareness. Become aware of the definitions of yourself that have become unconscious for you, and then deliberately redefine yourself. Oh, so that's what we're doing. Yes, this is what Jesus did. This is what the Fillmores did, right? Myrtle Fillmore. I'm a child of God, therefore I don't inherit sickness. That's the affirmation she used. What was she doing? She realized she had a limited definition, perception of who and what she was. She redefined it. She said, oh my God, I'm walking around thinking I'm this frail, weak person that, in my body is just not really good. And she said, wait a minute, that's not the truth, right? I am a child of God. Therefore, I don't inherit sickness. And as a result, the rest is history, right? Oh, there's just a really long section in here. Good stuff, good stuff. I'm gonna skip quite a ways further, really almost until the end. The last chapter says creating a transformation journal. So, I mentioned that at the beginning of this. I suggested that you do that. And this actually goes through to define that a little bit further. So having said that, this is an amazing chapter, like they all are, right? But man, there's some of the stuff when you start to go, oh my God, you start to put these puzzle pieces together that Jeshua is sprinkling all around. And my way that I processed this was, at first they were just puzzle pieces randomly put here, here, over here, over here, over here. And then the further I went along in the material, I saw how these puzzle pieces start to come together. But that's Mike's experience. My hope and prayer for you is that you have your own experience, right? You have your own experience. So having said that, it's been fun to share this chapter with you. I am looking forward to discussing it. And I'm curious to hear what you come up with in your time together. And next week, we're going to be tuning into lesson 14, the wise use of time. God bless you, and look forward to seeing you next week. Take care.